Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, prepared to give this yummy treat of asparagus and I believe turnip to a pair of African nightcrawler worm bins. These systems have been in service now for 145 days. Bin number 1 is up here on the top shelf, bin number 2 right below it. And you know, last time the order of things, well, have been shuffled because I've since the last check-in with these two guys 13 days ago when they got feeding number 11, we were still bringing them up over to the bench from over here. But a number of systems that are older have since been retired over the past couple weeks, and now they've kind of slid into their proper locations. So we're going to get a glove on, bring these systems up onto the bench, and we're going to get them fed. So let's get to work. So now I usually either watch in its entirety one of my previous videos from the last check-in of my systems before coming down here to work on them. And I did the same with these little guys from their last check-in 13 days ago. I watched the video, but I watched it just by kind of skimming through and not really listening to any of the narration or what was being discussed, but just visually, I guess some of the takeaways that I got from that quick refresh was that the feeding seemed like it was not all that big, so that, you know, coming back in this much time would probably lead to us finding minimal leftovers. The coffee filters were showing us where we last fed, right down the middle over here. From above, I don't know if you could see it, but there is a little bit of a trench, so the let's see, the other takeaway was that it seemed like moisture was really nice, like there was a good bit of moisture in here. But just in case, I've got my water bottle. If we feel we want to add more, we could always do that. I don't know why. Just like this might have been the system where everything we gave them was very dark and dingy, kind of brown in color, maybe potato peels. Maybe some other fairly boring gray or brown food, which wouldn't have been banana peels, but these are some leftover banana peels. Definitely look like time has taken an effect on those. They're getting broken down nicely. And just little clumps of bedding, you know, I mean, I'd really rather have this stuff sort of broken apart and separated. This is another stem of a banana. I guess that's the idea behind aerating, from my point of view, is to not only get air down into the system, but to also dislodge stuff that seems to be clumping together, especially stuff that I put in, you know. I mean, sometimes you burrow through the material and it's pretty much all castings, and there too it could get pretty compacted, but at least there you feel like, well, the worms made that, so, you know, that's just the way it is. Nature taking its natural route. But if it's a big pile of unused bedding materials like this shredded paper cardboard, that's usually what I put it down as, like a foundation under the feedings. So that's probably the same reason it ended up in here last time. But now we're going to just spread it into the surrounding material as we excavate and inspect the feeding zone. And, you know, I did watch the last check-in and it happened so quickly, but now I am reminded of the fact that I did start noticing that a couple of these spherical corncob bits were located during the last check-in. And I also remember now that bin number 1, from what we remembered, still had probably a couple, and not too long ago we actually did encounter one of the corncob spheres over here in bin number 1, but maybe even last time we didn't locate it. And we didn't really intend to go out on a wild goose chase looking for it either, but, you know, I figured I would invest a few moments to do that, and here's one of them. With a little worm even crawling down into the tiny little corncob hollow center. So there are corncob spheres in both systems still. I bet if we kept looking we would probably find more in bin number 1, but it's just not one of those things that we're going to spend too much time going out of our way to search for. It just seemed appropriate in this case to do that. Hopefully you agree. So this is my prepared bedding here. And if the color of some of the paper used to make this stuff looks familiar, it's some of my old tablecloth. And now that I got a nice replacement tablecloth, what better thing to do with your old paper tablecloth than create bedding out of it? And what we're doing here is probably going to create almost the same result as last time, is putting in a big pile of bedding, which hopefully the worms will be able to make some good use of. And perhaps if we were to come in with my wand here and even dampen it a little bit better than it already is. I mean, my prepared bedding, depending on what batch it is, can be pretty damp. Sometimes it's even pretty dry. In this case, it felt like a little bit of extra moisture would definitely complement this stuff. And at the same time, probably make it a lot more welcoming for worms to want to come over and hang out in this stuff too. So now I think we've got ourselves the foundations for a really nice feeding for the wormies. Let's give them their stuff. At first, when it was in the bag, I thought it was pears, but then the scent of it started telling me, no, not pears. Definitely smells more like something that I would make soup out of, and have made soup out of. That's the reason I recognized its scent. So yeah, very nice. I wasn't quite sure, when I was pulling the bag of the frozen asparagus out of the freezer for them and I placed it into that transport container. Didn't seem like all that much, but once I emptied these to bring down here too, start to feel like, okay, now we've got ourselves a nice substantial meal. And hopefully they enjoy it. They probably will. I hope they do. And what I just sprinkled in there was a little bit of grit. Sometimes at this point we would be also putting in maybe some coffee, worm chow, other things like that. I'm not prepared with any of those things. All I did was I bought down some stuff from the kitchen, from the freezer, and I grabbed my water bottle only because it did seem to me like lately I've been adding quite a bit of moisture to all my systems, Now that the furnace is running again and the heat's on, there's much drier air in the house, sucking the moisture out of my worm bins. And I got to protect against that, not only by covering with plastic, but also supplementing it. And it's just something I never really did a whole lot of, but I feel like I'm improving over time, especially from the point of view of keeping an eye on moisture for these little guys. I kind of pointed out in a reply to someone's comment recently in terms of what I think some of my best improvements over the past couple years have been. And number one is to be not so stingy with the bedding and be a lot more insane, not so stingy with the moisture. And the worm bins will just seem much more happy and healthy for it. At least that's the impression I get. It does feel to me like perhaps before we cover up here, we might want to even add a little bit more moisture. I mean, things feel nice, and I would say that in terms of how I used to consider moisture in the bins to be, I would probably consider this as being still okay, but I'm going to err on the side of caution and assume that these little guys would probably appreciate something a little bit more moist. It did feel to me like some of the stuff I just blended in, some of this leafy matter and recovered old bedding from the feeding zone and stuff like that, still could suck a little moisture into itself. So why don't we do that? But before we do, let's break out my leaf collection here, because I just reloaded. Got a whole bunch of this stuff, and now we got a really good excuse to come in with the spray wand, because lots of dry stuff. I'd like to make it a little bit more cozy by dampening it all down. Well, that looks pretty good to me. I think we're almost done. All we got to do is restore our feeding zone indicators to remind ourselves where we last fed these little guys, in case we have trouble remembering. And then back can come the plastic covers and we'll be done. So, before we wrap up here, I just really quickly want to say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.